Have you ever wanted to get into Yu-Gi-Oh, but then saw the price of a meta deck, and decided that maybe the simulator's the best for you after all? Well, this is the video for you. Today, I'll be going over some of the cheapest decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! None of these decks should cost more than 30 euros to put together, and none of their cards are particularly rare or hard to find. As an extra rule, despite being cheap, these decks are all really functional. That means they have some decent lines of play and an actual cohesive strategy that makes them work. They're not a pile of 40 random cards that you've picked up for 1 cent each, and they could maybe win against the deck back in 2005. No, these are proper archetypes that work well together, and form a fun and fairly competent deck. Now on to the first of the decks. It's actually a combination of 2 archetypes, which are Unchained and Evil Eye. When you look at both decks, you can quickly see what they have in common. Both decks are filled with dark fiend monsters. This is important because a few of their effects lock you into fiends. So by playing both archetypes together, you're not being locked out of anything. Another thing in common is that they both share destruction effects. The Unchained strategy is all about destroying your own cards to gain effects like summoning from the deck, which you can then use to make their link monsters, some of which can even link away with your opponent's monsters as a quick effect. On the other hand, Evil Eye strategy makes you destroy some of your own cards as a cost for using their effects. So you can turn that disadvantage into an advantage by destroying Unchained cards instead, and then gaining their effects. Since Unchained don't use their normal summon much, Cerziel, Watcher of the Evil Eye is a perfect addition to the deck. When you normal summon it, you can search Evil Eye of Selene, and then equip it, which makes it so that it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and can't be targeted either. This gives you an incredibly hard to destroy monster on top of everything the Unchained monsters do already, and helps speed up the Unchained side of things by then being able to destroy your own cards with Cerziel's effect. When playing these decks together, you'll often end up on something like a Cerziel equipped with Selene, which can destroy an opponent's monster as a quick effect, and then an Unchained Soul of Rage, which can link with an opponent's monster as a quick effect. To give a quick example of what an Unchained Evil Eye deck might look like, here's a deck list. Now to start with the most expensive cards, you've got Unchained Abomination and Unchained Soul of Rage. These are the only cards that might go for a bit more than €1 in this deck, so depending on your budget, you might want to cut them down to 2 if you can't afford 3. Other than those, you also get Unchained Soul of Anguish, and then one of both Evil Eye Link monsters, because they can come up occasionally. Then if you've got some extra, just throw in a Beat Cop from the Underworld, and a Link Aribe, because Beat Cop can protect your Evil Eye equips to make them even harder to destroy. As for the main deck, you want 3 Abominable Unchained Soul, 1 Unchained Soul of Disaster, 3 Cerziel, 3 Basilius, 3 Aruha, 2 Rakia, and 2 Sarama as your monsters. Aruha is your main combo starter for the Unchained side of things, and the other 2 aren't as good to draw, so you only run at 2. You need Unchained Souls to be able to make the Unchained Link monsters, so you run 3 Abominable Unchained Souls since it's the easiest to summon, and its 3000 attack can help you go second, and then 1 Soul of Disaster since occasionally you can use it to link an opponent's monster away. Cerziel is the most important Evil Eye monster, so you run it at 3. As for their spells, you run 3 of Abomination's Prison, Evil Eye Re-emergence, Evil Eye Domain, and then both of their equip spells. And then you run 1 Terraforming and 1 Wailing of the Unchained Souls. Finally for the traps, you run 3 Chamber and 3 Escape, since you want to destroy these as part of your Unchained combo, and then 1 Evil Eye Retribution since it's searchable and can give you a bit more protection. It's a decently versatile deck, and can go first or second depending on the situation. An Unchained Abomination is a decent monster just to have in your collection, so it's a decent first deck to go for if you're just starting Yu-Gi-Oh! The second deck we're going to look at is Tenyi. Now I made a video about Tenyi recently because they're going to get some new support, but that support probably isn't going to be budget for a while, so we're just going to look at basic Tenyi right now, which is still very playable. Tenyi's gimmick is that they use normal monsters, but instead of running actual normal monsters, they just have link monsters with no effects, and they spawn tokens. You then use the Tenyi spirits to special summon themselves from your hand, then link climb higher into things like Shaman of the Tenyi, who can then special summon a Mare from your graveyard, and spawn a whole bunch of tokens. You can then give extra protection to their normal monsters with things like their field spell or their counter trap. Since this deck also doesn't use its normal summon, you can just throw in 3 Vanity's Rulers. After making Mare and spawning its tokens, you can just tribute 2 of them to make a Vanity's Ruler, and that'll stop your opponent from special summoning monsters, which can just be an auto win. To give an example of a budget Tenyi deck, we'll start with the Tenyi Spirits. You run 3 Ashuna, 3 Vishuddha, 3 Mapura, 2 Nahata, 3 Shathana, and 3 Adhara to give you the highest chance of drawing a few Tenyi spirits. You then run 3 Pot of Avarice and 3 Pot of Desires. Avarice because you quickly go through 5 monsters, so it won't be dead in your hand too often, and Desires because there's not too much that you would mind banishing in this deck. Both of those also make you more likely to draw one of your 3 Vanities rulers, so that you can lock your opponent out of special summoning. To close off the monsters, you also run 3 Mermeh because it's an important part of your combo. Finally, you run 3 Foolish Burial Goods and 3 Heavenly Dragon Circle because they help you search your worm monsters, and 3 Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, which can help by sending Mermeh directly to the graveyard to then revive with Shaman of the Tenyi. You then run one of their field spell and one of their counter trap just to give you a bit of extra protection. For their extra deck, you need 3 Monk of the Tenyi, since it's vital for your combos, then 1 or 2 Shaman of the Tenyi depending on how many you can afford. You can then throw in a Draco Master of the Tenyi, as many Berserker of the Tenyi as you want, and then at least 1 Sahasrara since it's a good end for your combo. You can also throw in some synchros like Draco Berserker of the Tenyi or Baxia Brightness of the Yangzing, since occasionally you will be able to make one. Finally, you can just throw in a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, since if your opponent destroys Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi, you just get to special summon it. And it's the highest attack extra deck normal monster in the game. This deck's great if you want to try a combo deck on a budget, and its combination of Floodgates and Protection can make its board quite hard to out. Finally, the third deck I want to talk about is Witchcrafters. I also made a video about them recently, but this is a more budget version as well. Unlike the previous 2 decks, which are mid-range or combo decks, Witchcrafters is more of a control deck, so if you prefer that kind of style, this is the deck for you. Witchcrafters work by discarding your own spell cards as cost, and then those spell cards add themselves back to your hand in the end phase so that you have them ready to go for next turn. They're all about getting out their boss monster, Witchcrafter Madame Vert, who can negate all your opponent's monsters on the field at once, and can also boost your spellcaster's attack and defense to make them harder to beat in battle. You try and back her up with a Witchcrafter Bystreet, who protects her from destruction once per turn, and then Witchcrafter N, who has a quick effect to destroy an opponent's card, or Witchcrafter Gola Mariri, which can summon itself from your hand to bounce an opponent's card back to the hand. Here's what a budget Witchcrafter deck would look like. Now this deck's cheaper than most because you don't actually have to buy an extra deck for it. I have 2 cards, Cyframe Lord Amiga and Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, because they're cheap level 8 synchros that work with Cyframe Gear Gamma. If you don't want to bother, or you decide that the hand trap's too expensive for you, you don't need to get those extra deck monsters. Cyframe Gear Gamma's probably the most expensive card in this deck, but it's a useful hand trap, since your small Witchcrafters tribute themselves for cost, meaning you won't have a monster on the field, and it can protect them from being Ash Blossomed, leaving you with no monsters left on the field. You then run 3 Shmieta, Pitor, and Jenny as your main combo starters, and then run N, Ver, and Gola Mariri. As for your Witchcrafter spells, you run 3 Unveiling, 3 Holiday, and 3 Creation, and then 1 Draping, 1 Collaboration, 1 Bystreet, and 1 Scroll. You also run 3 Spell Chronicles and 1 Witchcrafter Patronus, because they can do a cool combo that ends with 5 extra cards in your hand during your opponent's standby phase. I made a video about that, so check it out if you want to see more details on that combo. Finally, you run Metal Phase Fusion and 2 Magician's Rest Stage because they're good discard fodder, and then a Magician's Right Hand and Left Hand to search with Rest Stage. You also run a Foolish Burial to get your small Witchcrafters in the graveyard, and then a Reasoning to potentially get you an extra special summon. This deck really starts to pick up steam if it can survive your opponent's first turn, and leads to some fun control type gameplay by deciding when to negate your opponent's entire field, or destroying something with Zen, while also considering how many cards you want to keep in your hand to be able to boost your monsters during the damage step. So that was one cheap YuGiOh deck for every style of gameplay. If you found this video useful and would like to see more, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you want more ideas for cheap YuGiOh decks like this, just give me a comment telling me you'd be interested in seeing more. Other than that, happy dueling!